from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Investigations, questions, and delays are weighing on USDA nominations. Meet a top producer candidate still pursuing perfection in Illinois, and an agribusiness checking on recent strength in the cattle market.
Things look fairly good, but I don't want to get too optimistic.
And meet a California vintner working to recover from the Napa Valley wildfires.
AgDay, presented by the Chevy Silverado. High-strength steel for high-strength dependability.
Good morning, I'm Clint Grivis. The man who would be the chief scientist for USDA is now being pulled into the Russia investigation, which could derail his yet unscheduled confirmation hearing. Former Trump campaign advisor Sam Clovis supervised George Papadopoulos, who was a low-level volunteer aide for the campaign. Now, as part of Robert Mueller's investigation looking into Russia influence on the election, Papadopoulos admitted lying to the FBI about his contacts with Russia. Clovis is a presidential advisor with close ties to Iowa, and according to a report in Bloomberg News, Clovis said Papadopoulos was acting on his own and that the campaign had a strict rule against traveling abroad and claiming to speak on behalf of the campaign. Now, Bloomberg and NBC quoting unnamed sources reporting that Clovis testified before a grand jury in this case. This raises the question about the Clovis nomination to serve as chief scientist at USDA. A hearing date for the confirmation has not been set. Senator Debbie Stabenow, the ranking Democrat on the Senate Ag Committee, says a confirmation hearing for Clovis should be delayed in light of the new twist in this Mueller investigation. Stabenow has raised doubts in the past over Clovis' qualifications to assume the role of chief scientist. Now, Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa sits on the Ag Committee. He still stands by the nominee.
Democrats don't want him in there because they want somebody that's a physical scientist as opposed to a social scientist. But remember, this is education, research, and economics. And a professor of economics, a person with a PhD, ought to be considered for that position as much as anybody else.
Also in Washington, 9 senators are holding out on the nomination of Iowa Ag Secretary Bill Northey to be USDA Undersecretary. Senator Ted Cruz is leading the impasse. Cruz wants the White House to broker a meeting with a group of Midwestern senators over the renewable fuel standard. Cruz wants changes to the RFS that would help oil refiners. Now, in a related matter, EPA sent its proposed final volume requirements of biofuel blends for 2018 and 19 to the Office of Management and Budget on Wednesday. OMB will now review the numbers. EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt abandoned his plans to lower RFS levels following pushback from Midwest lawmakers. Now, that final rule is due by November 30th. A new survey of bankers shows 82% of agricultural lenders reporting a decline in farm profitability in the last 12 months. However, the pace of that decline is slowed. The survey, produced by the American Bankers Association and Farmer Mac, shows 51% of agricultural lenders noted an increase in the demand for agricultural operating loans, while there was no notable change in the demand for agricultural real estate loans. The survey of more than 580 agricultural lenders revealing that the agricultural loan approval rate is 84%.
Journey to the Top is brought to you exclusively by Smart Stacks. Smart Stacks. Stay true to your roots.
Each year, our corporate partners at Top Producer Magazine name a producer Top Producer of the Year. Well, we're following up with a few past candidates of this award to see how their operation is progressing. Betsy Gibbon takes us to Warsaw, Illinois to catch up with 2014 candidate Joe Zumwalt.
The roar of machinery, multiple hands at work show another harvest is here in Warsaw, Illinois.
My least fun job is the grain cart, and guess where I am?
As the combine cuts another row of soybeans, it may be the best Joe Zumwalt and his dad Sam have produced on this ground, just miles from the Mississippi River.
But we're looking at probably lower 90s on this field that you're looking at behind me. Again, we're amazed by what we're seeing out here.
Lofty yields, the result of planning, practice, and lessons from crop losses in 1993 and 2008.
I guess if you had to sum it up, you have to have a lot of resilience to be able to recover and deal with the stress of that. And it's just a unique territory down here when you farm in a river bottom.
The Zumwalts say they are not looking at expanding acres near the river, but yield. They want to get more out of every acre, especially when they don't have a flood year.
We got to realize that we're pushing populations, and if you're going to push populations, you better be ready to feed it and have the mechanical ability to feed it, plus the people who can read those foliar tissue tests or those soil tests and tell you what you're going to need.
They don't just think a return on investment is simply making a dollar and increasing bushels.
At the end of the day, for the people that work with you, sometimes a reduction in stress is a return on investment. Anything you can do to relieve stress on an individual, to me, is efficiency.
Today, their major focus is a succession plan to transition acres and management. They are in the middle of a 5-year plan Joe created for his uncle and dad, both in their 70s, a plan they feel works best for their operation.
Reality, that's what it is. You have to let go. And it's hard at times, especially by yourself, but we'll all get through it.
Acres will gradually be transitioned to Joe annually. At the end of the 5 years, his dad can get more income for retirement or may upgrade equipment for his son to lease. The plan all hinges on depreciation laws.
Hopefully it's equipment that I can in turn lease back from him and use on my operation. That keeps him in a farming income, it keeps him on his own acreage, and it helps bring new equipment into our lineup. So it's kind of a win-win situation.
It's got to happen, so who to say is my plan better than his? We work together and let's make it work and move on.
And so if you can make a plan in a fashion that maintains their relevance in the operation, their input, their expertise, and their years of experience. You want inside, outside? I was trying to
Because the way the Zumwalts see it, a succession plan is crucial, even as harvest rolls on.
Well, Mother Nature really wasn't correct this year, but we still did it.
Reporting in Warsaw, Illinois, I'm Betsy Gibbon.
All right, thanks, Betsy. Other things the Zumwalts have done, well, they've upgraded storage systems and put their headquarters on higher ground since they live near the river. Power is slowly returning to more than 1 million homes and businesses in New England, which got pounded by a storm Monday, winds reaching 80 miles an hour in some spots, snapping trees and dragging down power lines. Well, in Vermont, dairy farmers who lost electricity in the storm are relying on generators to power the equipment that allows them to keep their operations running. It's unknown how many farms lost power, and it could take until Saturday to have it fully restored. Vermont is the largest dairy producing state in New England with about 800 dairy farms. Now, many of those power lines were brought down by drought-plagued trees, especially in Maine. Mike Hoffman has more. Today's crop comments. Mike.
That's right, Clinton. Virtually all of New England has been experiencing a moderate drought the past 2 months. The drought weakened the tree roots. The head of Maine's Emergency Management Agency says recent rainfall softened the soil, and strong winds made the trees vulnerable. Trees and branches were no match for those powerful winds. Yes, snow is falling across parts of the northern tier of states again. Check out this picture from Kyle Osmera on Facebook. That's what harvest brought this week as snow fell in the Cornhusker state. USDA says Nebraska corn harvest is less than halfway complete, more than 20 percentage points behind the 5-year average. And taking a look at the weather map, you can see the system moving through the western Great Lakes, causing some rain and snow across those areas. We'll tell you where that moves next and have your forecast coming up. But first, here are some hometown temps.
Farm Journal On Air is the go-to app for American agriculture. AgDay, AgriTalk, U.S. Farm Report, and more. 24/7 access to all of your favorite shows, TV and radio. In your hands, on demand. Farm Journal On Air. Download the app today.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk about the recent strength in cattle markets and whether the run can continue. And later, this California grape grower shares his experience fighting the Atlas fire in Napa Valley, what it means for vineyards in the path of the flames. Chip Nellinger, Blue Reef Agri-Marketing, our guest here at the Agribusiness Desk. Chip, let's talk about the cattle market last week, seeing some good strength in these markets, even though we're technically past grilling season. I think the folks in the upper Midwest will tell us we definitely are past that.
Especially where there's snow on the ground.
That's right. So as we work our way through the rest of 17 into 18, what are you watching in this market?
Yeah, well, I think you hit the nail on the head. We've had a pretty good run higher here in cattle, and even with some, fairly bearish cattle on feed reports about the last 3 months running. So we are building numbers here. So out ahead of us, it doesn't look as rosy, but that's, kind of out into next spring and summer. Between now and then, though, things look fairly good. But I don't want to get too optimistic. We've got a big premium built up in the February and April live cattle contracts relative to where cash is trading. And even though cash has trended higher the last few weeks, I think producers really have to be on the lookout for additional strength over the next week or 10 days. Take advantage, even if it's just buying a put, let's lock some profit margins in out there, because most cattle that are on feed right now that are going in the February and April time slot have pretty good profit margins at current levels.
That's true.
So, I'm optimistic more could come, but I also want to take a look and say, hey, let's not get too bulled up. We've got good profits here. Let's do something to take some of that risk off the table.
As we get past April into next year, obviously we expect this herd to continue expanding, but it hasn't really grown at this massive rapid rate that it has in the past, it seems like.
Yeah, and the other good thing is, we've seen increasing numbers. It's kind of been a slow, steady increase. The other good thing is I think demand, both domestically and export-wise, are really holding us together and kind of absorbing some of those higher numbers of cattle on feed.
Sure.
So I think that's a good thing. The dollar's going to fluctuate, and that could affect exports a little bit. But there's some indications that the economy's starting to grow a little bit. I think that could help us on into summer as well. Again, there's some big numbers coming out there. This last placement number was awful big. So there's a wall of cattle coming out here several months ahead of us. But if we can hold this domestic demand together, I don't think the bottom has to fall out from under us. And, obviously feed grain prices are at the low end of the spectrum here too. So that's helping, solidify some gains as well.
Yeah, a little optimism, we'll take it.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Chip. We'll be back with more AgDay in just a minute.
Farming has changed. Markets are riskier than ever. For customized, focused commodity marketing, contact Chip Nellinger or Adam Dreyer at 309-550-7213.
Unlock the power of ag technology this December in Indianapolis at the first ever Ag Tech Expo. Learn all about it at farmjournalagtech.com.
AgDay weather, brought to you by Kawasaki and the new Mule Pro FXR side-by-side. Ride like a boss with high-end styling and rugged capability.
Welcome back to AgDay. Your meteorologist Mike Hoffman looking at the weather map here. And Mike, kind of that system moving back toward the northeast.
Yeah, and it looks like it's going to have some decent rain ahead of that warm front. And that warm front is going to bring a pretty good shot of warm air behind it. So putting the maps into motion, you can see that warm front slowly making its way into New England as we head through the day. There'll be some rain with it, but you'll notice our computer model keeps a lot of it through the northern tier of New England and then taking it away as we head through tonight. There'll be some areas of showers in the western Great Lakes along the cold front. So this is a one-day warm-up for parts of the lower Great Lakes into the Ohio Valley. And then we see some colder air coming in again, although this area is not as cold as what it was replacing a couple of days ago. So we'll be watching that. You can see lots of snow with these systems, though, across southern portions of Canada. High pressure building in by tomorrow morning into the Twin Cities area, and the next storm system coming into the Pacific Northwest. This is a little different than we've seen recently. This one's kind of splitting into two areas, and the northern one, with a developing warm front out ahead of it, is going to have some pretty decent snows across parts of eastern Montana into North Dakota and eventually Minnesota. Some of those areas, this will be their third accumulating snow of the season. Precipitation estimates past 24 hours, decent amounts southern Mississippi Valley, parts of the Great Lakes, adding in the next 36 hours. You can see our computer model continues to track some along that front. It also puts some decent amounts, parts of the Pacific Northwest, even into northern California, with some pretty good moisture there with that secondary system. Snowfall past 24 hours. Northern portions of the Plain States and the Northern Rockies will add some in those areas as well over the next 36 hours or so. Checking out temperatures, 80s and a few 90s in Texas today, but still 30s and 40s for highs this afternoon in the northern plains. You can see that colder air making progress again. Lows tonight back into the 20s for much of the northwestern plains, but 60s to near 70 from Memphis southward. And then you can see during tomorrow afternoon, still pretty warm south of that front, but to the north, some colder air coming in once again. Jet stream showing, well, lots of systems trying to come east, but you'll notice a lot of the trough tries to go to the western, northwestern portions of the country. Pieces of that try to come eastward. And we may see another change as we head into later next week with this trough digging in once again to the east, but that's still a good week to 10 days away. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. First of all, Pocatello, Idaho, variably cloudy and rather mild today, high 57 degrees. Rolla, Missouri, turning warmer, an afternoon shower in spots, high of 75. And Concord, New Hampshire, maybe a morning shower, then warmer, high 66.
We'll check on cattle markets and export concerns next on Drovers TV. And later, we're off to the Golden State to visit grape growers as they try to recover from wildfires.
AgDay, brought to you by Creden soybean seed from Bayer, designed using smart genetics with tailored varieties to fit any field condition. Drovers TV on AgDay is brought to you by QLF. For 40 years, QLF has been proud to support American farmers that feed the world.
On Drovers TV, CME live cattle and lean hog futures rising to life of contract highs earlier this week. Prices lifted by investment fund buying and optimism that meat prices will continue to go up. Live cattle markets are up nearly 10% in October, now at their highest point since June. Speculators already holding massive net long positions in cattle are now adding to those bets on Tuesday. Meanwhile, U.S. meat exports posting strong gains in 2017. U.S. protein exports are up 10% so far this year, including a 10% increase in beef exports and export volume and a 16% increase in beef export values during the first 8 months of this year. U.S. beef has made significant gains in the Asia-Pacific market. That includes increases of 23% to Japan, 16% to Hong Kong, and exports to South America are up 21%. But the U.S. Meat Export Federation remains concerned about the administration's policies on foreign trade.
The U.S. Meat Export Federation CEO Phil Singh told reporters on a conference call this week he is worried about the future of U.S. exports in light of Trump administration positions on such trade agreements as the North American Free Trade Agreement and the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Leaving NAFTA would be a big mistake, he said, and even thinking of leaving NAFTA will be a mistake. Leaving TPP earlier this year left the United States at a disadvantage, he said.
Singh says that U.S. competitors like Australia are paying much lower duties to export their meat products in many Asian markets, adding that he believes the only bad trade agreement is the one you're not in. All right, when we come back, we'll hear how one California grape grower fought to save his vineyard during the recent wildfire outbreak.
In the Country, sponsored by Kubota. Discover the power behind the M6 series at Kubota.com or visit your local Kubota dealer today.
Recovery and cleanup continues in California's Napa and Sonoma valleys following the recent fire outbreak. And for those who lived through it, the impact will be felt for years. Napa County grape grower Jim Ragucci shares his own story with help from the California Farm Bureau.
It was so quick, it was incredible. I mean, and the sound of it was, you always hear about, people talk about a freight train and that's exactly what it sounded like. Just kind of finishing the night, putting the kids to bed, and we had a phone call 10 o'clock from friends of ours that there was a fire behind our place. So we drove out, took a look, and it was in Atlas Peak. It was coming pretty quickly. We came back, made a phone call. First dozer took an hour and 18 minutes to get here. The big fire push was on the other side of the ranch where it came right by the winery. And then it was burning so quickly there that fuel tanks were wanting to blow up. They were getting hot. And so the dozer's operator, Matt, he shoved dirt over the top of the tanks and then pushed all the trees over. When the trees hit the ground, our guys, there was 3 or 4 of our guys, they turned around and climbed the trees and put them out with fire extinguishers. I've been through fires before where we'll burn back and we'll burn the trunks and they'll come back. But where the fire sat and got really hot, we'll see following year you'll see bud development will be impaired. And then if you go the following year, we'll see if they pull out of it. So you got a 2-year process here. You can kind of see where where the areas where the fire was really hot, those vines there's no reason to wait 2 years. We plant everything with a 1-year fallow. So we'll pull a vineyard, leave it fallow for 1 year, and then plant it the following, then 4 years from that, we'll get the first crop. And normally the first crop is it's a decent quality crop. Then the vineyard, the second, third year, it kind of adjusts and the quality bounces around. It takes about the 6th, 7th year before everything kind of adjusts for quality. And I've had years where I've been 50% off of a crop. It's nature. That's what farming is. So this one here is just a little different. It's nature threw a fire at us. I mean, we lost some grapevines. A lot of people lost their homes and lives. So, I mean, we're pretty much we came through this thing without anything hurting us. You know, there's a lot of people worse off than we are right now in this valley, and then Sonoma and Santa Rosa.
And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. Start your day with us. For Mike Hoffman and all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.
AgDay, brought to you by Ram Commercial, America's longest lasting heavy-duty pickups.